Stanford University.
You got to be here in person to get the food. So, okay. Hello? Welcome to Fall 2011-2012 EE 380. I'm Andy Freeman. The other lecturer is Dennis Allison. I'd like to thank you by making the change from Gates. We hope to keep this room for the foreseeable future. And for parking, those of you who got to run might consider parking structure 2 on Panama Street or the Robley parking lot just off Santa Teresa. For those of you taking the class for credit, EE 380 is run online. Assignments are straightforward. Write a couple of sentences that convince us that you saw each week's lecture. You can watch all the talks on the web during dead week, but we found that if you try and do that, you don't finish. And most folks who fall a couple of lectures behind never catch up. As a result, we don't do incompletes. Nobody ever finished, so we don't bother. While you can watch lectures online, we highly recommend attending in person. Today, there's food. Usually there's not food, but there's almost something really amazing that happens after the cameras go off. And if you're not here, you don't see it. That said, EE 380 tends to be fairly interactive, but it's not a press conference. If you'd like to do an interview, each speaker's information will be available. Their people will arrange things with your people and all that good stuff. Don't take anything you do here for stock investment advice. These are not forward-looking statements. Insert all disclaimers you could possibly have. Today's speaker, Mike Daniels, an IBM VP, will be introduced by Michael Karasik, head of IBM Almaden. So, here we go.
Those of you who are watching this on the web, you still have time to get here to attend in person and consequently get some of the food. So, happy to be here. I am director of the IBM Almaden Research Lab. We've got about 300 members of the IBM Research Organization in South San Jose. So IBM, and Mike's going to say more about this, IBM celebrated its 100th centennial this year. And what we've been doing is a little bit of reflection, looking back. And I'm going to show you a brief video, 100 seconds, we call it 100 and 100. It looks a little back a little bit at what we did, but mostly we've been looking forward. And looking forward at technology changes, at really the changing consumption of what we do. And what we do is IT infrastructure, IT services. Mike runs IBM Global Services. He's got about 250,000 employees, although one of the fun things about an organization that big is you never know how big it is. I guess you would know at this particular point in time how large it is, but 1 millisecond later it's changed. And one of the advantages of being in the services organization is you're really at the tip of the spear. A lot of change that we see in the marketplace and a lot of new technologies that we introduce and new kinds of engagements with our customers are initially seen as really kind of one-off services engagements with our customers, mostly enterprises, governments, things like that, before we decide we can codify them in terms of products. And Mike has been with the company quite a while. I'll let him tell you how long. And has a really good perspective as a business leader. This is very much not a technical talk and not intended to be. Mike has a degree in political science, so he's very well qualified to take the long view and look at how technology and consumption of technology, planet-wide really have embraced each other. So I guess with that, let me, before we bring Mike up, let me segue to kind of a little video that'll just, it's kind of fun. It's to look back at what we've done. We're all fairly, proud and in some sense odd when we look at some of the things that the company has done in the last 100 years that we didn't know about. I didn't know we invented the excimer laser, for example. Turns out we did. And then we'll have Mike go for it.
Project Echo satellite. The Mandelbrot set.
Okay, I guess everybody's awake now. Yeah, actually there's less compressed versions of this online. This came from YouTube. There's quite a number of videos, longer and shorter. They actually go into some detail and some stories from some of the individuals who were involved in some of the projects. And we also have sponsored a website to look at some of the things that the company has done over the last few years. So with that, Mike?
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. As Michael said, this is our centennial year, which I think is something to be proud of. There aren't a lot of companies that make it 100 years. There certainly aren't a lot of information technology companies that make it 100 years. So we don't have a lot of company in that space. I think if you know anything about our company, it won't surprise you that we've chosen to celebrate our centennial, not by looking backwards, but by looking forward. And frankly, one of the ways to do that has been engaging groups like yourselves in a discussion about where the industry's been and where it's going and what we can expect. And I think from an IBM perspective, we are very much in the business of business computing. So the things that make business run is where we spend our energy, our $6 billion of research and development each year. And that's where I hope to engage us all in discussion. Now, let me just see if I can get to... All right. I think we've learned 3 lessons here. I've been with, Michael did say, I've been with IBM for 150 quarters, for those of you that are wondering. So, symptomatic of today's business world. We've learned 3 lessons from IBM's history in particular. The 3 lessons I want to touch on are the actual nature and implications of information technology, the inflection point at which technology is at today. I believe we're entering a golden era in this industry. And finally, the implications of this change for society at large and the new leadership that I believe will be required. One lesson of IBM's 100 years is that information technology matters. Arguably, more than any other science or technology over the past century, it shaped our world. More than a century ago, mechanical calculation technology, most importantly the punch card tabulator, changed the way business and societies measured everything they did, from railroad companies' rolling stock, to retail giants' inventories, to nations' population censuses. 50 years ago, when IT was just becoming an industry, it invented electronic data processing. The mainframe was an enormous tool of transformation. It automated the back offices of companies and governments. It made possible online transaction processing, changing everything from banking and insurance to retail and airline transportation. It helped leaders of every organization realize that next to people, information was their greatest asset. 30 years ago, the industry invented the personal computer, and we've all been the beneficiaries of the enhanced personal productivity. 15 years ago, the industry gave birth to the internet, giving billions of people access to information, to companies, and to each other, transcending the limitations of time, space, and geography. And when we think about how Silicon Valley has contributed to all of this, the facts are pretty astounding. Disk drives were invented here in the Silicon Valley at IBM's San Jose Research Center. Relational database technology was invented and developed at IBM's San Jose Research Lab in 1970, giving birth to great companies like Oracle. Nanotechnology era was ushered in by IBM research scientists in Albany 25 years ago by moving individual atoms and writing the IBM logo using those atoms. Nanotechnology is now applied to healthcare, aerospace, automobile, and a whole host of industries. And Almaden and Stanford scientists are collaborating on spintronics technology, which may lead to future high-density and non-volatile memory devices. Over the course of the last century, information technology has gone from a set of tools to an industry to a science. You miss this if you see technology merely as a succession of gadgets, websites, and the next big thing. The longer lens of history helps clarify the far more multidimensional history of this technology and how its foundational components are advancing and recombining today. These components include sensing, the mechanism by which we get things into information and events into the computer. We started with punch cards, with tape, speech in the early 60s. There was a project called IBM Shoebox in the early 60s that successfully translated 16 words. I drove over here in a car today that had a vocabulary of more than 10,000. From the late 50s to 2010, the amount of information that could be stored on a given area of a disk drive increased by a factor of 17 million. Over that same period, the speed at which data could be read from a disk increased 8,000 times. And the cost of storing data dropped 1,000,000-fold. Compare that to any other industry set of metrics. Storing a gigabyte of information, that's about an hour of standard quality TV video, in 1980 required a 500-pound refrigerator-sized machine. By 2010, a gigabyte could be stored on a disk smaller than a coin. The second element, foundational element of our industry is processing, the core speed and capabilities of the computer. Early tabulating machines relied on mechanical device to turn circuits on and off. Were followed by transistors, solid state, no filaments to burn out, much smaller, and didn't get as hot. But they did allow the computer to do more calculations faster and dramatically increased our processing capability. But we're reaching a limit on how many transistors can be packed onto a computer chip. One option for making microprocessors more powerful is the optical chip, which uses light photons instead of electrons from electricity. Optical chips would give off almost no heat and would be far more efficient. In addition, superconductors have not been used in computers, but the conversation about speed in the coming decade will be moving to exascale computing. Such systems would perform 1,000,000 trillion calculations per second. That's about 500 times the speed of the fastest supercomputers in 2010. One way to get there will be the help of new materials, among them high-temperature superconductors. The ever-increasing hunger for information has driven the demand for speed, and speed keeps making us hungrier for information. The cycle shows no sign of ending. It's anticipated that this year we will create over 1 zettabyte, 1.5 zettabytes of information. That's 10 to the 21st. And by 2014, that will be 28 zettabytes in the year. So we see the cycle just continuing. The third element is logic, the software and languages that let computers accomplish tasks. Computers reveal patterns, if X, then Y, by translating the binary language of machines into the languages of human thought. And those languages have become richer. As those languages have become richer, so have the answers. Grace Murray Hopper and John Backus developed early languages that let computers and humans talk to each other in code. Hundreds of other languages have since been developed, making more complex instructions possible. The relational database structured data in a common way, so information about different things could be matched, sorted, or queried to find relationships. We see applications today of these capabilities in the New York Police Department. It installed its ComSat database in 1994. This is a project that we did with New York City, which allowed us to predict where crimes might occur. One of the things that you might notice from the difference from watching a movie in the 70s and being in New York City today is about the way that they are able to move their police force to high crime potential areas and have allowed people to come out the doors. But as the city found, a safe city is a city where people spend more money. You also see the deep QA technology in Watson. You saw that in Jeopardy. I believe you all will have an opportunity as a university to take Watson on in Jeopardy in coming November. I wish you well. I hope you do better than the University of Pittsburgh and Carnegie Mellon did. So go Stanford. Finally, connecting. The ways computers talk to people and machines. When people, computers, and devices interconnect, computing's impact is multiplied exponentially. Just think back, a production radio type was ready in 1941 and went to work sending communications for the US military during World War II. We moved on to time sharing, which allowed users in several locations to take advantage of the resources of one computer. ARPANET began to network computers, so many people could share the resources of many computers, a forerunner to the internet. Computing anytime, anywhere, by anyone has become more than just a vision realized. In 2011, it's an expectation. Networking technology has released computing into the air around us. That's the idea of the cloud. These days, the machines are increasingly talking to other machines, not humans, across the cloud. They might be two powerful systems exchanging financial information and making split-second trades, or a tiny sensor in a river wirelessly telling another computer how much water is flowing by. In the coming decade, machine-to-machine conversations will skyrocket, overtaking data communication that relies on having a human at one or both ends. And finally, we have architecture, the changing nature of the computer itself. Architecture is the story of technological advances coming together to create new systems, which in turn advance our thinking about technology. If you think about architecture these days, if you think about exascale computing and the size of the data that will be, the size of the data sets we'll be dealing with, I think we can see that we will need entirely different structures. I can give you just an example. We work with Bharti Airtel, the largest mobile provider in India, who has over 150 million subscribers. They produce 6 billion call records a day, and they would like to mine those 6 billion call records in order to provide their constituents with the right promotions to further increase their usage of the network, as well as their pleasure of receiving the benefits of that network. In order to mine that data in real time, at 6 billion, at 100 million transactions per second, we could no longer store the data. Had to fundamentally change the architecture to analyze the data in stream. Today, the smartphones and the cloud together are representing the pattern of previous architectural leaps by pushing computing out another level, this time reaching billions of people around the globe. At the same time, another class of user is joining the cloud. These machines, sensors and physical objects, without people attached, have been dubbed the Internet of Things. As devices drive computing outward, the systems that handle all of that data, the machines that make up the cloud, will need to become astoundingly sophisticated. Now, I believe, as I said at the beginning, that we are entering a new era of computing. If your understanding of information technology comes from the media, you might have thought that it's a story that can be easily divided into two ages. First hardware, then software, or into the pre-internet and post-internet era. But that's not the way technological advance really happens. It isn't either or, one kind of thing or another. And scientific discovery isn't simply before and after. It's complex, iterative, and continually evolving. As you reflect on where we've been in our industry and the IBM company, we started with tabulators, things that simply counted. This led to systems that were programmable, things we know that are computers today, where we program those systems. We make them more and more powerful, but we still have applications that run on the metal in these systems. Where is this going to really get to smart systems? Systems that will learn from what they do, systems that will recognize patterns without programming. A higher order of problem solving will be possible. When this happens, and when we begin to really commercialize the kinds of capability that we have in Watson, it's going to transform industries in fundamental ways that we can probably only begin to think about. Think back to the original computers, back when we did the first airline reservation systems on System 360, back in the 60s. And think about what airline reservation systems, the impact that that had on the entire industry and other industries that were related. So let's talk more about Watson. Perhaps one of the signal breakthroughs of computing in the decade. Watson, earlier this year, defeated the two all-time champions on the American television quiz program, Jeopardy! It required a team of 25 scientists and 4 years of development. It's not just about new software code, nor is it about just faster processing. It's integrated insight and advances across all dimensions of computing. Like all Jeopardy! Contestants, Watson wasn't connected to the internet. Instead, it drew its information from its own database, more than 200 million pages of content fed into it by IBM researchers. It was powered by 2,880 processor cores and 15 terabytes of RAM. Watson's algorithms quickly understand a question. Humans naturally understand puns, very difficult to do that in a programming language. Watson runs very complex analytics. Hundreds of algorithms scour the database. The more closely the results match, the more confidence Watson has in its answer. And then it has to beep in 3 seconds. It also learns from its mistakes. And if you watch the program, occasionally when Watson's natural language understanding wasn't clear, he stayed out of the game until he heard 2 or 3 answers going forward and was learning as it progressed. And by the way, we didn't invest 4 years and millions of dollars to win Jeopardy! This was the most powerful way that we could, we thought, bring forward this new idea of and breakthroughs. You will see Watson, and already have seen Watson, in different applications across all industries. This natural language capability, this deep question and answer capability, is already being applied in the healthcare industry. We have announced, in fact, a joint project with WellPoint, the nation's largest health benefits company, where Watson will be assisting their physicians in their network, not doing the diagnosis, but assisting the physician to get a better diagnosis, lifting the game of their entire network. It also represents a new paradigm in computing, a coming generation of systems that are designed for specific workloads and that can actually learn from their own experience, their mistakes and successes, as well as those of others. This is part of the reason 8 major universities are already partnering with us to explore and develop Watson's technological capabilities. My point is that IT is more than code and more than devices. It's had a remarkable 100-year run, but today the first century looks not like a complete story, but like Act 1. The best years of this technology, this industry, this science are ahead of us. And the reason we'll begin to transform our systems, our operations, enterprises, and personal lives to take advantage of a smarter planet isn't just because we can, it's because we must. Why? Consider the following. In North America, up to 22% of total port volume is empty containers. The Port of New Jersey has 100,000 empty containers sitting in storage, worth nearly $200 million. Consider how antiquated our healthcare system is. In truth, it's not a system at all. It doesn't link from diagnosis to drug discovery, to healthcare deliverers, to insurers, or to employers. In the United States alone, we make 2.2 million dispensing errors a year because of handwritten prescriptions. That's 2 sigma, for those of you that are... The U.S. healthcare system loses more than $100 billion a year to fraud. Meanwhile, personal expenditures on health now push more than 100 million people worldwide below the poverty line each year. Consider how gridlocked our cities are. In a small business district in Los Angeles, driving around for parking in 1 year generated the equivalent of 38 trips around the world, burned 47,000 gallons of gas, and emitted 730 tons of carbon dioxide. Congested roadways in the U.S. cost us $78 billion annually, in the form of 4.2 billion lost hours and 2.9 billion gallons of wasted gas. And that's not even counting the impact on the quality of the air. Consider the unsustainable logistics in our food supply. In the U.S., a typical carrot has traveled 1,600 miles, a potato 1,200 miles, a chuck roast 600 miles. Grocers and consumers throw away $48 billion of food every year, while millions go unfed. So let's go to the second lesson that we've learned in our 100-year history, which has become clear over the past decade that IT has gone beyond a science and an industry. It's become a pervasive aspect of the modern world. It's therefore something every leader must master. And I don't mean learning how to tweet or use social media. IT today isn't just a back office engine or a never-ending flow of consumer gadgets. Technology is the way we now see the world, including those dimensions that have heretofore been invisible to the human eye. It's how we map and understand the dynamics of the world's complex systems, and can be increasingly how we decide on the best course of action and put it into effect. Indeed, this technology now pervades every aspect of the way our world works. The systems and processes that enable services to be delivered, physical goods to be developed, manufactured and sold, everything from people and freight to oil, water, and electrons, and billions of people who must work and live. For example, today there are nearly 1 billion transistors per human, and each one costs 1/10,000,000th of a cent. There are 4 billion people, 4 billion mobile phone subscribers. There are 30 billion radio frequency identification tags produced globally. These sensors and devices give us, for the first time ever, real-time instrumentation of a wide range of the world's systems, natural and man-made. The planet isn't just instrumented, it's also interconnected. Today, there are 2 billion people on the internet. Both systems and objects can now speak to one another as well. This is what I was saying before about the Internet of Things. Think about the prospect of 1 trillion connected and instrumented objects. Cars, cameras, roadways, pipelines, even livestock and pharmaceuticals. All of this is creating vast amounts of data. And through advanced analytics and even more powerful supercomputers, we can turn that data into insight. All over the world, we see forward-thinking leaders who are mastering these new capabilities. They're applying all that intelligence to make systems, processes, and infrastructures more efficient, more productive, and more responsive. Let's look at a few examples. University of North Carolina healthcare system. By assembling all of their data into a master data warehouse for the first time, they have been able to provide powerful benefits to their patients and to their constituents who work there. They've made it easier to qualify for a whole new set of research opportunities, including a $61 million Clinical and Translational Sciences Award, truly fundamentally changing the nature of that business. Smarter Social Services, Alameda County. Like most social service agencies, Alameda has witnessed a series of challenging trends, the most prominent of which is the need to do more with less. With caseloads of greater than 500 per caseworker, it doesn't take long for the average caseworker to grow jaded and burned out. The key to improving their experience in the system may lie in emulating the practice of the banking industry, where while they've figured out the efficiency and new ways of serving their clients. Alameda now gives its caseworkers the tool to be more proactive in helping their clients get assistance despite the challenge of scarce resources. Through business intelligence, Alameda agencies can see the whole picture of a customer's service. They're best able to coordinate service delivery for that client, minimizing gaps and preventing overlap. The county's new solution, the Social Services Integrated Reporting System, extracts client information from a series of department-specific systems and then enables agency staff and management to view case performance from the global agency level down to the worker and all levels in between. Business intelligence and automated alerts give caseworkers the means to proactively manage their client base and for the agency as a whole to coordinate the delivery in a far better fashion of all social services. They've experienced $11 million in direct savings through fraud and waste reduction. They've revealed relationships between benefit recipients and programs, helping to better serve the needs of their recipients, and are able now to ask what if as to how to better coordinate all programs that are under their jurisdiction. Smarter farming. The increasingly globalized nature of the commercial farming industry has increased risk and made profitability more elusive. Profitability in commercial agriculture, in large measure, is a function of providers' ability to come to market with the right product at the right time. Sunworld is emerging as a top grower, playing on the world stage because it brings together business intelligence and a world-class research capability to breed the specialty varieties that meet customer and consumer demand. What they've been able to achieve is a per box labor cost reduced by 50 cents for each of the 11 million packed boxes per year. They've increased their customer base by 20% per year because of the improved analysis of crop yields, sales data, and retail buying trends. Water usage per unit has decreased by 8.5% since 2006. Targeting drip irrigation has resulted in 5% reduction in harvesting costs and a 20% reduction in fuel usage and 50% increase in yield. These are the kinds of problems that we can now attack that can change the very nature of our life. We also have a very special project that we've been working on for the last 4 years with the Mars Corporation, where we sequenced the genome of the cocoa plant. The cocoa plant in 1998 was almost eliminated. It grows in subtropical climates. It's not. It's grown by many growers, very susceptible to disease. By taking that genome, putting it into the Mars, then put it into the public, we now have the ability for scientists all over the world, working with farmers all over the world, to make a far more robust genome for the cocoa plant, far more resilient to the kinds of problems that they had in the past. And the story goes on. I won't take you through every one of these. I especially won't take you through smarter taxation. However, if you live in New York like I do, there's a very much of a double-edged sword. They've gotten very good at collecting their taxes. Now, period of discontinuity is, for those with courage and vision, a period of opportunity. There'll be winners and there will be losers. Some companies, some industries, and some countries and cities will shine more brightly than others. And the new leaders who emerge on this global stage will win not by surviving the storm, but by changing the game. As someone who's spent the past 35 years in this information technology industry, I firmly believe that this industry, more than any other, creates the tools and know-how that literally change how the world works. And as I said, we're at a significant inflection point. We stand at a consequential moment for both scientific thought and technological capabilities. As today's industry leaders, we all have an obligation to understand it, not its mechanics, but its implications, and to incorporate it into our future work. This leads to the third lesson of the past century of technological evolution. We need to rise to a new level of leadership and maturity within the IT industry and beyond. I'd like to close by offering you three practical thoughts about the management challenges facing all of us as this industry enters its second century. First, I urge you to embrace the establishment of standards, and they must be open. Of course, the importance of standards is widely understood, not just technology standards, but new global rules of the road for trade policy, intellectual property, and more. But when you look at the world we live in today, when you understand it as a complex system of interdependent systems, you realize this question of standards is actually rather concrete. It's about the interfaces. As we know, in systems, interfaces matter. Compatibility matters. Just because you throw things together doesn't mean you can make it work as a system. We need standardized interfaces between the transportation system, the energy system, between the education system and the healthcare system, among water, traffic, commerce, and public safety and government services. This won't happen by itself. I believe our industry has an important responsibility here, but it cannot act alone. This will require a new kind of collaboration across all sectors of civil society: business, science, government, academia, and communities. This goes beyond politics or ideology and beyond particular areas of expertise. It's simply necessary on a globally integrated, technology-infused planet. It's the necessary foundation for our world to work as it could. Necessary, but not sufficient. Second, we all need to step up to some important policy implications of this technological transformation. Cameras in London and Chicago, in the Incheon Free Economic Zone in Korea, help alert police and other first responders to emergencies far faster and more precisely than ever before, and that saves lives. People using Twitter during a natural disaster, such as the hurricane in Haiti, provided real-time information about damage, injuries, and the location of rescued services. That can also be a lifesaver. As medical data is captured digitally, it becomes possible to dramatically reduce errors and improve treatment. Indeed, combined with technology-enabled genomics, we can begin to deliver on the promise of personalized medicine. But some citizens have expressed discomfort. Who has all this data? What will they do with it? Do I trust them? Similarly, with regard to security, companies and governments are excited about the competitive economic and environmental advantages of smart infrastructure, smart grids, smart rail, sewers, smart buildings. But does that mean that our essential infrastructure is only as secure and reliable as a website? These are serious issues, and they will require serious consideration by all stakeholders of society. We need to build more than the technological and business systems. We have to build a societal constituency if we're to achieve any of the benefits of bringing these things together. And that leads me to my last point, which will fall very much on you. We'll need a new model of leadership. Our traditional idea of a leader is someone with superhuman vision and will, someone who sees the future, points to the horizon and charges ahead, either compelling or inspiring others to follow. Frankly, this is the standard leadership model in this industry. And without question, the cult of personality in business is a powerful lure. The press cultivates the rock star leader. The markets trade on it. Some employees crave it. But given the complex reality we live in today, a world that has become a global system of systems, this model of leadership, it seems to me, no longer seems appropriate. Much more we will have to lead by listening, by attending to what these multifaceted ecosystems are telling us. As leaders, we will more often have to edit than dictate. A reality as dynamic and complex as this must be approached with humility and with an intent to serve rather than to dominate. And we will need management systems that are architected for inclusion, collaboration, and transparency. We're well on our way. As the world continues to become more interconnected, instrumented, and intelligent, your participation as future leaders will be imperative. I encourage you to reach out and team more about the projects and learn more about the projects we're pursuing from our Almaden lab and how we can strengthen the partnership between IBM and Stanford going forward. Most importantly, the key precondition for real progress now exists, not just in our labs, but in our world. People want it. From boardrooms to cabinet rooms to kitchen tables and around the world, there is a hunger for fundamentally new approaches. One thing is clear. What the world is about to experience is more than a new era of technology. It's a new era of thought. Technology just makes it possible, which means that the next 100 years promise to be unlike the last. And that's very appealing for those whose basic orientation, curiosity, and energy is directed to the future. Thank you. Do we do question and answer? Yeah? Yes. Please.
There's the enterprise business, and then there's the consumer business, but they're not completely separate.
Correct.
And for example, I only have one phone in my pocket, right? Doesn't come from the enterprise guys, okay? So how is IBM going to deal with the rise of Apple and Google as they penetrate the enterprise with their phones and their pads, right?
Right. So we don't have a dog in the fight of what you have in your pocket. What we do have a dog in the fight on is as you transact with retailers, as you transact with your bank, as you perhaps even in social media make a comment about what was going on at the ball game or at the concert or at the lecture. We are producing tools for business to help them analyze those very large data sets, big data.
But as I do my work,
yes.
My collaboration, I use my iPhone to do my collaboration at work. I use it in terms of my work groups. I use it to access my enterprise information.
Right. Okay.
This stuff belongs to Apple and Google, not you guys.
No, but what sits behind there, all of the processing that sits behind there,
yeah.
And that processing, by the way, has to be assured. It has to be compliant. It has to be auditable. It has to be, you have to know that that transaction actually happened when you posted that deposit in your bank. So I think it's a very complementary role. We don't really care what instrument you use to come in on. We know how to secure the enterprise. We know how to maintain its compliance. We know how to make that transaction work, right? No matter what the form factor it's coming in on. Those are the tools, the middleware tools that we're providing to enterprise clients. Businesses will have to decide what their policies are about who can come in and what access they have. I think you all know as well as I do, you can read the papers every day. Without policy around this area of security, it's going to be very difficult to maintain any level of assuredness in these big networks. But that doesn't mean that we want to exclude things. We think I use an Apple. That's my enterprise box. But that's not where IBM makes its money. IBM makes its money in running those systems, helping clients build those systems, in the middleware that are the fabric of operating those systems, and in the analytics that go with understanding what's going on with all that consumer data from the retailer's perspective, the insurer's perspective, the bank's perspective, et cetera. Yes?
Somebody with a political background, Are you concerned about the sociological pushback on corporations analyzing, big, what do you call big data, lots of consumer behavior?
This is there's a ditch on either side of this road. Right? There's no doubt about that. On the one hand, you'd like to think that with the proper analysis of this, I mean, I go back to the example of the genome, sequencing that genome, putting it out into the open world, allowing everyone who wanted access to it, and then building on everyone's shoulders, has produced a cocoa crop that is far more resilient today than it was just 20 years ago. We're doing that with 75 other key crops like that aren't done, under mass supervision. On the other hand, you can use that same data in nefarious ways to prey on people, and I think that's part of what I'm suggesting is I think that needs to be part of our dialogue as a society. How do we feel about it as a society? Or do the benefits outweigh the detractions? And I don't think there's an easy answer there.
That's sort of a general question. Science, but you're talking about people's data, information about people, which is a different issue, really.
Well, I mean, today, if you're in the financial world or in the healthcare world, I mean, that's dictated by regulation, right? HIPAA governs what we can do with that data. Many countries have much different privacy laws than the U.S. In the U.S., you can operate computers with your personal information outside of the U.S. Most European companies won't permit that. That's why I say I don't think there's a simple answer. I think it's one of the debates I think we ought to be having, as opposed to should taxes go up or taxes go down. There's a lot more important things going on in the world, and I think perhaps we could have a little more robust conversation if we teed up some of these issues, because the benefits are huge. I can take you to the Bay of Galway. IBM is working with the government, with the fishing industry, with people who manage the water rights in Ireland. Make sure that the data that we're collecting about the bay, what's going on with the fishing stock, is the water maintaining its health? I mean, there's wonderful things we can do. On the opposite side of that, there are bad things that can happen. I don't think there's a simple answer to that question.
Might have toward these things that might make the public feel a little more comfortable?
Well, for instance, we have said, and I think we're one of the only companies that have said this, is that we will not base our decisions around our employees and their health care on anything about their genomics. That doesn't mean that we're not, on the other hand, trying to get the price of sequencing down to $1,000, which could fundamentally change the nature of medicine. It would allow very personalized medicine at the molecular level. So from that standpoint, we've said no. We're not going to. Even if we had that information, we wouldn't use that to prevent an employee from getting health insurance or a policy or a job or a promotion or whatever else. But I think we're just in the early stages of policy making in this area, and it's going to take leadership from a lot of companies and a lot of government agencies and a lot of society. Yes, sir.
It seems like the system gets a lot more efficient with this new technology, and therefore fewer people can get the same work done by quite a large factor. What do you see as the future trend in unemployment? What's going to happen?
Well, that hasn't changed, and that hasn't changed. I mean, the example we used on on the price of computational capability. That hasn't changed in 50 years. What I am suggesting is, I think we have an opportunity to build an entirely new set of industries. Water management in the next 40 years is going to be a big problem all over the world. And bringing people together to understand where it is, how does it move, how could we, who uses it, how do we impact it. There's a whole set of environmental sciences, I believe, that will have play a big role in there. To get to exascale computing, we're going to need a whole set of combination of biological and computational science professionals, PhDs. I think there are lots of opportunities here for the applicate. The whole world of marketing will change in profound ways. So anywhere you look in these examples, you say, well, yes, it does make it more efficient, but there's a different set of jobs that come. I just was with the president of Brazil, and she knows she has the World Cup coming. They just 2 years ago, they had these terrible floods on the hillsides where hundreds of people were killed. This is a terrible problem for Brazil. I showed her a project that we did in IBM Research called Deep Thunder, where we're able to model storms at the microcell level and do predictive analysis of within 2 days. Yeah, we think these are the areas most likely to flood. In fact, it's these 4 hills, and that's where you have to put in place a public safety option. That created a need for a whole different set of city planners and a whole different set of skills required for that. Now, if you say, will there be job displacement in other places, the answer is yes, there will be.
What do you do with all the people who are 40?
There's jobs at university suite.
Oh, I don't think. There's always the. This has always been a challenge in society of retraining. But if you think about how we retrain, by the way, we've studied how most of these programs work, and they're horrible. They train people in things that have no application and no demand. So I think this is a problem that can be solved. I'm quite optimistic as it relates to that. And what I'm pessimistic about, and what makes me crazy, is the level of discourse we have around these issues. Yes.
So you have kind of a unique perspective because you deal with all these clients. What do you see as kind of a current roadblock in computing technology? Is there just too much data? Is there not enough compute? Do we not know what to do with the data? What would be something you've painted this vision of 10 years from now? What's something you're stuck on today?
Well, I think there's the big. If I look at what are the big ahas in this kind of computing, the big ahas are going from petascale to exascale computing. We have prototypes in our labs right now, but even it even challenges. When I started at IBM, I think we were using something like 10 things on the elemental table, and I think we're using all but 3 today. So it goes right back to basic research around are these the right things to We've got some projects going on right now with which is the second big blockbuster, I think, is cognitive computing. So computers you don't program, computers that learn through patterns. So we have a chip today in the lab that isn't like any other chip that we've had. It works like your brain. Right, synapse. And we have to only scale that about 100 orders of magnitude to figure out whether or not it actually works. But we are beginning to make progress there. If you look at if you look at the size of the data sets that are coming and the power of computing that you would have, you would say this old notion of storage and processing is a fundamentally flawed architecture, right? You would begin integrating from the bottom up, and streaming computing offers huge. I mean, we did there's no reason you would have seen it, but there was an ad from IBM. It's a real thing. It was a hospital in Canada. It turns out that premature babies, if you can analyze, if you can sense from enough places and analyze enough things and catch things 6 hours sooner than they are catching them today, you can extend the life, put a knee in the curve on the extension of the life of that preemie. We did that with stream computing. Very complicated programming model. So all of those things are visible to us, but some of the things we talked about here, think about just putting sensors along. If you're in the Midwest, in some of these cities, and you put sensors along the sewer, in periods of high rain, they dump all that sewage into the fields, right? Because they have no way of controlling the water flows. It's not that hard a problem to solve. We've solved that problem. We don't have to wait for exascale computing. Think of cities. We've done over 200 cities now. Cities are a system of systems. You have your public safety, you have your public service. If you could start to connect those things, you can make a lot of things work for you. Stockholm. In Stockholm, we did traffic management. Took the number of minutes a day down 60%, the number of stoppages on the road down by 60%, took 35% of the people off the highways, put them onto mass transit, and took 19% of the pollutants out of the air in Stockholm, as measured by their government. This is doable. We've done that in Singapore. If you've ever been to Sao Paulo, it's a 60-mile traffic jam. I mean, it's unbelievable. You can start. I mean, you finish 60 a week later. You know what I mean? That's why you see all the helicopters landing on the roof.
Give them bikes.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. Yes.
Hi, Scott. I knew Mark Dean when he was a student here at Stanford, and now he's CTO of, I believe it's called Africa and the Mideast.
Yes.
And so other than talking about the what, so I'm kind of interested in the where and the emerging markets, and if you could say something about that.
Yeah, well, about 30% of our company is now in the emerging markets. Africa, we've just gone into. We're now in 20 countries. We see it. We're very excited about being in Africa. You have a billion people. It's the youngest population in the whole world, and will be. There'll be more young people working in Africa than there will be. Certainly, China has the same demographic problems that some of the European countries have after the one-child policy. We're working in those areas, whether it's South America or Africa or China or India. The amazing thing to me is, we like to think of, we tend to think of those places as doing things that are a generation back, but in effect what they're doing is skipping whole generations of technology and attacking problems in very, very efficient and interesting ways. So in Africa, we've got, working with banks, we're doing some exciting work with microfinancing. Most of the entrepreneurs in Africa are women. They're the best bet. They're the ones that pay back. They nurture their children. The men are good for about eight months, make a little money, and they're gone. So we're seeing this whole emergence of small and medium businesses in Africa. In China, we're seeing massive deployment of infrastructure projects. I mean, just incredible where the technology is and where they're going, and the speed with which they're rolling it out. India, if you've spent any time there, I always imagine driving in India as what packets in the internet look like. It's just
No rules.
no rules. No rules. Just don't look. You can't. If you make eye contact, you have a wreck. It's one of those. It's like walking across the street towards someone. If you make eye contact, you walk right into one another. You know. What's that?
They actually get there.
Yeah, well,
that's right.
Well, India's messy, but it's also fantastic. I mean, so there's a lot of great projects going on. We expect 60% of our growth until 2015 to come from those areas. I think there's some very enlightened leadership in those areas, and of course, there's always a business risk. In China, the risk is certainly in the areas of intellectual property. They have a fairly liberal view of that.
That's not what risk liberal is.
But I mean, they can't understand why, if you're ahead, why isn't it okay if I steal it? You know what I mean? But that's a cultural thing.
Is that open standard?
You know, that's a very good question. You know, the problem with China is they're trying to rewrite their own standards and impose them on the world. That is a big problem going on right now in China. And so we and Intel and Oracle and everybody else is working hard to sit on these bodies to say, wait a minute here, do we really need to reinvent the standard, you know, around interfaces and computers? So they've announced their 5-year plan. A big part of that is leadership in information systems. They're going to be formidable. You can't ignore it. You know, you can't ignore it. But
They don't want to pay the royalty on something where they figure, hey, we got enough people, we can set the standard.
that's part of their strategy. And you know, again, the disconcerting thing is when you look at the investments they're making in their grid, in their transportation system, in their distribution system, in how they manage their cities. In many respects, they've gotten very enlightened around, hey, you know, we were sitting over here polluting the world. They've put a lot of energy behind fixing some of those things. So, I mean, not everywhere, but to a large extent. So, I mean, I look at the world. I'm encouraged. You know, you've got 2 billion people coming into the middle class. It's going to change. It's going to change how the whole world works. Only if they choose to.
Is that right?
I think so. I think so. I don't think. I mean, I do. I have 3 children. I mean, I know how hard it is for the you know, the 20s and 30-year-olds right now. But I do think it's about what skills do we want our children to have? What industries do we want leadership in? And do we provide the right path for them to get there? I mean, let's face it. I mean, there is going to be a big. If you're in this, you know, this kind of a world with that many people coming online, if we don't change our skill sets, I think we are in for a very difficult ride. But I don't think it's because we can't. We have the best educational system in the world. We've done this in the past through government, academia, and business working together. It's a matter of will. Yes.
Should the United States be making the same kind of investments in infrastructure, bridges, R&D, education that China is, to maybe so we don't fall so fast? Or should we just give up?
Well, no. You know, do you remember how long ago was it that everything we read said, Japanese win, fold our cards, let's go home? And, you know, I lived there for 5 years, and they're still stuck where they were. Now,
We're making the same mistakes economically now.
I would say,
they made them.
Yeah, well, I would say this. Look, I'm not running for office, and I don't consider myself a policy expert. I do know this. Look at the number of companies that actually have true science going on inside in the form of research and development. I mean, IBM spends $6 billion. We used to have some company. We don't have. Look what happened to Bell Labs. Look at what happened to HP here. You know, I mean, I think there are areas where we believe, as a company, that without the PhDs that we have in research, we cannot sustain ourselves for another 100 years. We believe a big part of why we did sustain ourselves for 100 years was because we did have that capability, even though in the early 90s we had some crappy leadership that made us peer into the abyss. But having peered in, you know, that's a lesson learned. So yeah, I think, you know, research and development. Should we be investing? I think we have to agree that transportation is an essential element of the functioning, and it's one of the systems of systems that has to function right. You know, so where do you invest in that? I don't know, but I think it has to be invested in.
But the only thing that has bigger overruns than infrastructure in the United States, aka Big Dig, is big software.
Oh boy.
And this whole thing is sort of predicated upon big software working this time when it hasn't yet. I mean, there's always the billion-dollar project that...
Like what?
Well, the UK has had a number of them having to do with healthcare systems, where they've spent $2 billion, spent 5 years, and said, and then started over.
The FAA.
The FAA. There's
The bank systems work fine.
Yeah, my
Bankers don't work.
You know,
It's the risk you
what
take.
happened before there?
It's the risk you take that...
happened to be Swiss that
that's-
spent billions on software. That
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think it's... I personally don't see that. I think it's... I know of many projects that I'm personally associated with where we could easily connect the healthcare system to work and save billions in fraud. In fact, when President Obama was elected, we went to the administration and said, we will do it, we will save you $100 billion of fraud. We won't ask you to pay a nickel, we just want some of the savings. We'll do it on our dime. And there was no will to do it. So, and I'll tell you, we've thought it was a good bet, and we pretty darn sure we know how to do it.
Well, I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that the Big Dig could have been done on time and under budget. However, it wasn't.
Oh.
Yeah, I mean...
At least it got finished. Some don't.
Yeah, that's
But what is the...
software.
But what's the other side of that? I mean, do you...
Well, no, I'm just pointing out that there's
it's not all...
there's
It's
possibilities.
not all roses. I mean,
There's possibilities, and then there's what happens. And
I think there's plenty that can happen,
I
though.
have a real question having to do with IBM. The IBM cell architecture, which of course, when it made its debut, was pretty leading edge, and of course, a lot has happened since then. Is there a future for, we're talking about what's in the PlayStation 3? Okay, IBM had something to do with that, right?
Yes.
Okay. And NVIDIA has now shown up on the horizon with respect to their multi-cell processor GPUs and the like. When is IBM going to make its next move so that the cell architecture or its derivatives stay alive?
You know, I can't answer that. I do know that we have multiple projects going on with Sony, which is the largely where our chips go. We still supply, you know, that's still about $1 billion business inside of IBM. But I'd ask my colleagues here to get back to you on the specifics. I would be.
Asking about.
Yeah, I'm sorry. That would be a wing walk for me. I'd be way out on the edge of the wing here.
Okay.
Wait, we can take it offline.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You know, no offense, but
Many people
we can
think
talk a
that the
little bit
next-
about it, but we can't talk a lot about it.
Got it.
How much?
Or you have to hire me when you do.
Something like that. You can send me a resume, it'll be fine.
Many people believe that the next big revolution in computer applications will be robot vehicles, robot delivery vans, robot taxis. Is IBM likely to show up in that field?
Unlikely to show up in that field, other than as if you look at the structure of what goes inside of the vehicle, just like the car manufacturers did years ago, they decided they wanted to own and write that software. Whether they were very good at it, you can be the judge. We have participated in things like voice recognition inside the cars. We have participated in terms of middleware that it's, in a car today you get thousands of processors. It's quite a sophisticated network. We might participate at that level, but not in terms of production or saying, not at the system level. No, that's sort of out of our.
Probably don't know about us is we have a very large systems tooling and systems development organization, part of our rational software brand. And so the folks who build those cars will be doing and using our tools. Absolutely. Will we write control and manage autonomous vehicles? I'm sure we'll be involved at some level. Will we have codified products that do that? I think that Mike said it right. It's probably not core to our wheelhouse, but you never say never. But we will absolutely be very involved in that.
Would that include real-time OS, for instance?
Yeah, so that's an interesting conversation. The number of people who don't write operating systems anymore, that's actually, in my mind, a feature, not a bug.
Yeah.
I think we've exhausted you, but I very much appreciate your very fine questions, and thank you for the opportunity to be with you today.
For more, please visit us at stanford.edu.